Hi everybody, welcome to Galactic Wisdom. I'm going to lean forwards a little bit as I start this podcast so you can see who I am. Um, I'm Rupert, I'm a space scientist, I'm a paranormal investigator, I'm a UFO researcher, and I travel a lot, so I spend a lot of time in my car. Right now I'm actually in North Hollywood, and this evening I may do a contact event on my way uh, north of LA. So today, the title of today's event is the Alien Commandments. And well, I want to talk about the subject of commandments or advisements of moral rules and uh, where they come from. Now, the Ten Commandments, I'm not a biblical expert, but if the story of the Ten Commandments is based upon um, reality, if there is some kind of uh, a reality to some higher consciousness giving human beings the Ten Commandments, rules of behavior, is it possible that those higher consciousnesses could be called aliens, extraterrestrials, transdimensional beings? Um, Could it be that some of the biblical accounts of God, angels, demons, what and UFOs, what they really had experiences with was alien beings? Maybe angels could be Pleiadians because that's how they often appear, sort of shards of light, glowing shards of light, very benevolent beings. Could demons uh, be, or at least some people, when they see greys, could it be that they see those greys and think, oh, horrible, ugly little beings, they must be demons? Um, could it be that people have seen UFOs in the sky and described them as like um, biblical chariots floating around in the sky, God in a cloud, that sort of thing? Is any of that possible? Well, I think it's possible. And I think that it's almost certain that some people who see alien phenomena um, think, interpret it as being religious, godly, angelic, or demonic. Um, now, I don't know. I don't know where the commandments come from. I don't know if it was God or an alien or it just came from the imagination of a human being. But I'm going to talk about what I do know today. And I do know that I am actually being supported by, I just call them aliens. Alien means um, not not human or different from us. I just need to open my door there because it's exceedingly hot here and it's turning into a sauna in my car. Um, I'm in communication with different non-human entities. They have been communicating with me for about 5 years. They've been supporting my efforts. I experience their presence around me on a daily basis. When they come in, I often get I sense a sudden change in air pressure. I get high pitched ringing in my ears. Um, and sure, I'm sure there's like, medical conditions. You get a bit of earwax in your ear and it might ring a little bit, tinnitus or whatever that's called. Um, I'm sure there's that sort of thing goes on. But what I've come to understand is that when it happens to me, if there's anybody psychic around me, they suddenly look at me and say, "Hey, something just appeared behind you. Something just appeared above you." And so I have been able to correlate me having those experiences with other people, psychic people who I've been able to verify as psychic, um, seeing beings around me. And so these beings come around me, they enhance me, protect me, support what I do. And um, this is a common theme, in the world of ufology, that these non-human beings support and interact with humans that they feel are going to be able to spread the word about them, or and it's usually a positive word, spread positivity about them, uh, spread a little bit of wisdom, interspecies peace, love, light, and that's what they do with me. Now, throughout my entire life, I've been very concerned with trying to understand both reality and morality. Those are the two big important aspects of existence that interest me. I want to know what's real, and I want to know what's moral, how to behave in a moral way. Now, reality is something you can study objectively and come up with firm answers, and I've come up with many firm answers. I have a lot of knowledge, both from science and from my paranormal and alien investigations. The morality side of things, well, there aren't universal quantitative laws of morality. I can't derive an equation to tell me how to behave morally. Um, but I can derive equations about, the speed of a falling object, that sort of thing. Um, so, morality is a matter of opinion, but some opinions are more harmonious and peaceful than others. Some subjective moral opinions are really pretty violent and aggressive, and um, for various different reasons result in a lot of harm being caused. And these non-human entities support my vision of morality, which is, well, I have a vision which is universal peace. Universal meaning all conscious beings. Universal peace. Universal love is in my vision because we care unconditionally about all species, all people, all beings, even if we don't like them. We recognize that uh, they have a right to exist, and when they are upset, that's not a good thing for the universe. When they're happy, that is a good thing for them and for the universe. So, universal peace, universal love, and universal well-being. Well-being is kind of the currency, the quantity, the currency of morality. And I have, throughout my entire life, tried to come up with a set of rules, moral rules. Rule is too strong a word. Moral guidelines for me to follow and for other people to follow. I don't want to command anybody to do anything, but I like the idea of saying, "Hey, listen, this is a advisement that makes sense, and here's why," and give people an opportunity to follow it. Now, I've got a bunch of stuff printed out and written down, so I'm gonna read through this in a minute. But I am going to say that I've come up with not 10 commandments, but 3 advisements, and those 3 advisements, they're being supported by aliens, by non-human entities. I'm not going to say extraterrestrial because they're probably not. They're probably more likely to be transtemporal or transdimensional. They certainly have DNA that is terrestrial. Um, so I'm just going to call them aliens. But these aliens, they support my 3 advisements. Well, I'm sitting at my computer writing this stuff, working it out. I hear them coming in. I'm not sure if I'm getting downloads. I'm not sure if they're nudging me. They may well be nudging me and guiding me, putting little thoughts in the back of my mind. I don't know. But I do know that I've been trying to figure this out my entire life. And fairly recently, I've pretty much finalized my 3 advisements. So if alien beings were to ever come down to this planet and hand to us like a tablet of commandments or a computer screen of advisements, this is it. Um, if I was going around spreading hatred and unwisdom, what's the word? Ignorance, I suppose, then they would not be supporting me. But they know that I talk to people like I'm talking now, and they guide me, they assist me, they support me. So it's probably a mixture of me, my brain, uh, in combination with them that have come up with this. So I'm going to talk through it now, and I hope you get get some kind of pleasure, interest out of listening to me. I suppose, it's if I say to people, I'm going to tell you how to behave, people don't like that. People don't like being told how to behave, even though a lot of people seem to be okay with being commanded with the commandments. But people generally don't like being told how to behave. And so I am going to work through some advisements, some suggestions. And, you know, if everything I said you already agreed with, there'd be no point in me having to do this. But if we look at the world today, we can see that there's huge amounts of pain and suffering and conflict, and it's always been this way. And the world, I'm going to change that. Humanity needs assistance. Humanity on its own doesn't get it. And it doesn't get it to the extent that we are pushing ourselves towards the brink of destruction. And if we are to steer clear of that brink, then we need some guidance. And so here it is. And when I give this guidance, there are going to be some things that people say, "Oh, I was with you up until that point, and then now you just said that. Now I'm going to leave." But it's like, no, that's what you should be looking for. You should be looking for the things that you disagree with, because those are the things that need to be changed in this world. So you can hate me and disappear off if you want to, but my recommendation is that you look out for those things that you think, oh, I don't really want to do that. That sounds too hard. And when I say something like that, then stop and think about it. Think about what is the most peaceful option. Is it what I'm suggesting, or is it what you're used to? Because if what you're used to is not the most peaceful option, then maybe give some thought to what I say. Okay, so here we go. Let's see. I have a moral strategy, which is to be as moral as is practically possible for as many conscious beings as is practically possible. I talk about conscious beings because, who cares if you tear up a cardboard box? You're not hurting that cardboard box. But you do it to a mouse, well, that mouse is going to suffer. That mouse is a conscious being. And even though you might be scared of mice or dislike mice, it's still a conscious being. Um, and so we need to be kind to conscious beings, whether it's a mouse, a spider, a horse, a cow, a pig, a sheep, a chicken. You see, this is when some people are going to say, oh, no, I can't be nice to chickens. I can't be nice to cows because I eat them. But then we stop. But then we stop and we think, well, what's the most peaceful option? The most peaceful option is to be kind to all conscious beings. And if we can't be kind to a chicken or a cow or a pig, then when these scary looking aliens come in from space or other dimensions or other times and stand in front of you, what's going to happen? We're going to shoot them, or are we going to extend a hand and shake their hand and welcome them, no matter what they look like, and actually no matter what their beliefs are or their ways? So let's be as moral as is practically possible to as many conscious beings as is practically possible. One of the things that my moral vision and moral strategy require is for us to remove all forms of negative discrimination from within ourselves. So we're going to be nice to people, whatever their age, gender, ethnic background, nationality, sexual orientation, appearance, political views, religious beliefs. We're going to be kind to everybody. No negative discrimination. Morality is how we affect the well-being of others. Well-being is the currency or quantity of morality. I'm just going through defining a few important words to start with. The word good can be defined as something that increases or protects or promotes the well-being of one or more conscious beings. If I don't define words, then we're just going to disagree on what I'm saying, not because we're disagreeing on uh, the substance of it, but just on our definitions of words. I'm sorry, it's a bit loud here. There's a street light right next to me. I'm going to open up the other door and see if changing my open doors makes any difference to the noise. Bad can be defined as something that decreases or damages the well-being of one or more conscious beings. So there's good and there's bad. Now, you could be good to somebody while simultaneously being bad to somebody. Let's say you're Robin Hood, you steal from the rich in order to give to the poor. Okay, well, that is a good act and a bad act at the same time. If a mountain lion catches and eats a deer, then that action is good for the mountain lion and bad for the deer. The idea that there is something called absolute good is, that's a tough one because it's almost impossible to ever do anything that is completely good. So the idea of good and bad are useful because generally good things are good and bad things are bad, and that works. But you can't try and live your life according to being as good as possible because you're never going to quite succeed. But you can always be right. You can always make the right decision. Morally right is acting in the most moral way that's practically possible. Morally wrong is not acting in the most moral way that is practically possible. So it's not always possible for us to be good to everyone. However, it's always possible for us to choose to do what is right. Okay, that's enough. Uh, those are enough definitions so that we can start to come up with some advisements. Now, there are already many sets of moral advisements in the world today. Some of the advisements or rules or commandments or laws that people follow are the Golden Rule, the Platinum Rule, the Ten Commandments of Christianity and Judaism, the five precepts of Buddhism, the five yamas of Hinduism, the law. There's a lot of different rules of behavior that is designed to teach people how to behave well. Um, and I'm going to examine some of those to see if there's any validity to any of them. Since morality is subjective, I can't really just point to one of those sets of rules and say that one is right. However, we can use our intelligence, our knowledge about reality, our logical thinking skills, and our feelings um, to examine those to see if we agree with any of them. And I'm going to start with the Golden Rule. It's amazing to me how many people say, oh, I just follow the Golden Rule. Because, those are probably good people. If you follow a Golden Rule, that's, you care about others. You care about how you treat others and how others treat others. But you probably haven't thought it through. And I'm going to explain why. The Golden Rule is basically do to others as you would want them to do to you. And that sounds good, it sounds wise, but if you analyze it with hypothetical situations, it's actually very easy to conclude that that golden rule isn't always moral. I'm going to give you an example. A man sees a woman in a restaurant. He finds her to be very attractive, and he imagines that something that he would really like to do, something that he would really like is if the woman were to walk over to him and kiss him. Now, he decides to follow the golden rule, which tells him that he should treat the woman in exactly the same way that he would like her to treat him. And so he walks over to the woman and he gives her a big kiss. And it's like a siren is sounding to say, no, you can't do that. That's not good. Sorry for the noise here. And right there is where the golden rule fails, because what the man did in that situation was not moral. You can't do that. You can't walk up to a stranger in a restaurant and just kiss them without saying anything. He imposed himself upon the woman without permission. He violated her personal space. The golden rule, no, doesn't work. Forget it. If you follow the golden rule, I've just proved objectively that it's wrong. You've got to move on. Um, some people follow the platinum rule. It's for people that have realized the golden rule has a problem, so they move on to the next step, which is the platinum rule. The platinum rule is do to others as they would want you to do to them. Does that sound more wise? Okay, well, let's think about it, shall we? Another example. While a woman is eating in a restaurant, a man approaches her and tells her that he would really like it if she were to kiss him. The woman thinks about the platinum rule. She follows the platinum rule. She thinks about the platinum rule, which tells her that she should do to others what they would like her to do to them. So, even though she doesn't really like the idea of kissing a man, nor does her boyfriend who's sitting next to her, she stands up and kisses him anyway. Well, okay, no, that is where the platinum rule fails. Because a rule that obliges or obligates person A to treat person B in a way that person B, any way that person B wants, that's not moral. Forcing people to behave the way that they want you to, forget it. Platinum rule, fail. Golden rule, platinum rule, no, they don't work. They do not work. Superficially, they sound nice, but if you actually try and follow them like a rule, it does not work. The fact that so many people follow the golden rule and the platinum rules, and yet the rules are so easily shown to be flawed, shows us that many people don't really think much about the rules that they follow. Many of the moral rules that people follow throughout their entire lives are actually not moral, always, no matter how well intentioned they might sound superficially. And so, a very important lesson that we can learn from this is to not follow any moral rules or any guidelines that you haven't yourself personally thought thoroughly through with a wide range of hypothetical situations. Just because a rule is popular or common, just because your grandmother said it, or your parents, or your teacher, just because it's very, very well known, doesn't mean that it's right. And actually, I've just proved them objectively those two rules to be very flawed, which basically means wrong, because a rule that is flawed is not a rule. Another very well-known moral rule or commandment that a lot of people follow is thou shalt not kill. Now, I like the sound of that rule or that commandment. I'm not so into the idea of being commanded to do anything. Somebody that commands you to do something is probably something not quite right with them, in my opinion. But as a general guideline, I like the peacefulness of thou shalt not kill. However, by itself, it's not quite there. It's a bit too simplistic. Every time any of us walks across some grass, every time we wash our face, we can't help but kill some of the little insects and other organisms that live in those places. Do a Google search on the organisms that live in the pores around your eyelashes and eyebrows, and look at the electron micrographs of some of those creatures. Not much fun to look at, but you'll get the point that Every time you wash your face, you kill some of them. Well, thou shalt not kill. You can't avoid killing. Now, some people might say, Rupert, you're being too picky, you're being too pedantic. They didn't know all that stuff back then. They didn't know that stuff. You're right. They did not know that stuff. Now we do. So we're using a rule that is not accurate enough. If you have a rule that is not perfectly airtight in every situation, then you shouldn't be using it. Every time you eat a fruit, vegetable, or plant, you're responsible for killing that organism. Scientifically, plants are alive, and so they can be killed. Is it really not okay to kill a person or animal in self-defense? Is it really not okay to kill parasites like ticks or intestinal worms or bacteria if you get a skin infection or pneumonia? We have to kill sometimes. It's not practically possible not to, and so thou shalt not kill by itself isn't good enough. Now you could try and update it. You could say something. Well, how about thou shalt not kill conscious beings apart from in self-defense or as the lesser of two evils? You could expand upon the rule, but that's not what the rule is. So what I'm trying to do here is apply an intelligent, modern, knowledge-filled approach to coming up with the next level of moral advisements. And again, subjective, so you don't have to follow what I say. But clearly, the rules that I've talked about so far are not adequate as they are. Even if you buy into the subjective morality part of it, they're not yet airtight, and they need to be. So I have come up with, me and possibly with non-human assistance, 3 moral advisements. They're not commandments. You don't have to follow them. They're my subjective suggestions about how any of us could live our lives in ways that are morally right. They've been set up to be consistent with all of those definitions and visions and strategies that I talked about at the start. Oh dear, somebody just crashed. That I talked about at the start of the show. And they can be approximated. I'm going to start off by telling you approximate versions of my 3 moral advisements. The approximations have been approximated into short sentences, which are fairly easy to listen to and digest. So these are the 3 moral approximations. And as I say them, you can listen to them and think whether or not you agree with them. Does this sound moral? Does it sound wise? Now, I'm not asking, is it the kind of thing that you can do? I'm asking, does it sound moral? Think of the most moral person you know. Who would that be? Luke Skywalker, Yoda, Gandhi, I don't know, Mother Teresa. Whoever you choose as your most moral person. John Boy Walton, that's a good one. Is this the kind of thing that they would say yes to? 1, try not to harm anyone. 2, while trying not to harm anyone, help those who are in need. 3, while trying not to harm anyone, be kind to others. That's it. Try not to harm anyone, help those who are in need, and be kind to others. I don't think there's anything particularly offensive in there. I don't think there's anything that people are going to turn around and say, Rupert, how warped are you that you've come up with these moral advisements? But now I need to dig a little deeper to try and understand the more accurate versions of them. But let me talk a little bit about what I've just said there first. Clearly, those moral approximations place a lot of importance on trying not to harm anyone. It's the first of those approximations is trying not to harm anyone, and the second and the third start with while trying not to harm anyone. That is the most important message of this podcast. It's the most important message that I teach. It's the most important message that these non-human beings are giving to us. Try to stop hurting each other. Our world is suffering because a lot of people harm conscious beings, both human and other species in the animal kingdom. Ah, could you be nice to animals as well? If you really want to make the world a better place, the very first thing that we should do is stop harming each other. The first thing. And then, on top of that resulting platform of peace, we'd be able to focus far more actively and effectively on elevating everyone's well-being to much higher levels. The focus of the second moral approximation is to help those who are in need. I suspect that most good people in the world would agree that helping those who are in need is a moral endeavor. Unfortunately, though, sometimes when people try to help those who are in need, they end up hurting others in the process. For example, I try not to tune out when I start talking about being kind again to animals. It's interesting. I don't know. You know, in the past, we had a very racist past, slavery, things like that. And at that time, the general population just kind of felt, well, this is what we do. This is the way that it is. It wasn't thought back then to be this abominable act, which today we think that it is. I think that it is. I think slavery is horrific. But the point is that humans of the time didn't think there was anything wrong with it, but now we do. In the past, and much more recent past, sexism was a lot worse than it is today. Women didn't have the vote. Men were in charge of women. And we look back at how, just 60s TV shows and see how the men treated the women. And it's like, oh my God, you can't say that. You can't treat women like that. And that's how we look back at it from our perspective today. But back then, that's just how things were. What I'm trying to suggest to you right now is, if you, as a human being right now, listen to something I say and say, well, that's just the way things are, there's nothing wrong with that. Could you be, would you, if you were born 100 years from now, possibly look back and say, oh my God, I can't believe I used to do that? In the same way that we look back at slavery and sexism. So I'm going to ask you to understand how flawed human beings are, and maybe try to think about things from a more universal perspective. If a person were to comfort someone who's upset, someone who's in need, someone who's upset, by giving them some ice cream, well, that sounds like you're trying to do something nice. You're a good person, you're trying to help someone who's in need. But if that ice cream were dairy-based, then cows, who are conscious beings, would have been harmed to produce it. Now, you might not think about, when you buy some ice cream, that you're really causing much harm to anybody. But think about what that cow has to do, has to go through to produce that milk. First of all, they're enslaved. They're not roaming free. And usually they're enslaved in very bad conditions. You drive around, I drive around the country a lot, and sometimes I hit the most disgusting smells, which are miles and miles across. And it's usually because there's a pig farm or a cow farm close by. They do not live in nice environments. Okay, so in order for the cow, a female, to produce milk, she has to become impregnated. And that's not like a voluntary process. That's a mass factory scale forcing of impregnation upon those cows. And then when the baby is ready, the baby is born, the calf is born, and the milk is flowing, then the baby is stolen from the mother within 24, 48 hours, taken away. And the mother cows, you watch those videos of the mother cows chasing after the calf that has just been stolen by a human. And then in her grief, she's put into a small, confined environment and milked. And when that process, after several months, is coming to an end, she's impregnated again, and the cycle continues. That is not a harmless process. That tasty ice cream that ends up on your table in your mouth, that is not the product of morality. Um, and so, this is an example of trying to help somebody, but actually causing harm to others in the process. And that is why the second approximation that I have is, while trying not to harm others, help those who are in need. Okay, the third approximation is similar, sounds similar. If we're going to try and be kind to somebody, it's only wise and sensible and moral if we're able to be kind to them without harming anyone else. So those moral advisements, they're fairly simple, fairly easy to remember, but they're not as accurate as they could be. I am now going to tell you the full versions, like if they were written on a tablet somewhere carved into stone. This is what would be carved into stone. 1. Do whatever is practically possible to minimize any reductions of well-being that you cause to conscious beings. Everybody on this planet probably is guilty, I would imagine, of causing some harm to somebody at some time, even if it's accidental. Even the most wonderful, lovely person probably ends up causing some harm to somebody who's out there. Harm is a reduction of well-being. Can you imagine how wonderful it would be to be able to minimize the harm that you cause? If everybody on the planet minimized the harm that they cause, we could use the phrase "do no harm." It would be astonishing and wonderful if nobody did any harm, but you know, washing the face, etc., walking on the grass. So do whatever is practically possible to minimize any reductions of well-being that you cause to conscious beings. Doesn't matter if you cause harm to a tomato because it's not conscious, or a banana, but it does matter if you cause harm to a person, or a lizard, or any conscious being. So that's the first one. And I will tell you again, these advisements have the support of non-human entities. And if you think about it, each of these advisements has to happen, really, has to be followed, really, before you stand any chance of being invited into a non-human society or community. 2, and it starts off with the, don't cause any harm, while doing whatever's practically possible to minimize any reductions of well-being that you cause to conscious beings. Here comes the next part. Act to increase or promote the well-being of one or more conscious beings who have deficits of well-being. A conscious being who has a deficit of well-being, that's someone who's in need. A person who's in need, a bird who's in need, a fish who's in need, a conscious being who has a deficit of well-being. And if we can act to increase or protect or promote the well-being of any conscious being that has a deficit of well-being, then we are helping those who are in need. I've just said it in a more formal way. 3, while doing whatever is practically possible to minimize any reductions of well-being that you cause to conscious beings, that's the trying not to do any harm part. Wow, North Hollywood is a lot louder than the mountain where I live, a couple of miles away, a couple of hours drive away from here. Act to increase, protect, or promote the well-being of one or more conscious beings. This is what happens when I am trying to sleep anywhere when I travel around. I will pull up and I will park my car. I will lay out my bed in the back of the car. I will try to take a nap or go to sleep, and then a car will pull up next to me and play loud rap music or whatever kind of music it is. I'm going to do number three again because I got distracted. While doing whatever is practically possible to minimize any reductions of well-being that you cause to conscious beings, acts to increase, protect, or promote the well-being of one or more conscious beings, which is basically be kind to others. Um, so those are the full versions. Um, and I don't have time to go through with you now why we need a full version, but it's similar to the without not kill. You have to make it clear that, well, it's not possible to not ever kill. You need to have the do whatever is practically possible part. Sometimes we need to sleep. If we're sleeping, even though it would be possible for us to try to stay awake and go out and try and help people, it's not practical. We do need to get sleep every once in a while, so the full version is important. I'm going to now speak through some thoughts about these advisements in case anybody's interested in trying to do what our alien friends want us to do. Maybe they will help to give you some insights. The first advisement, which is do whatever is practically possible to minimize any reductions of well-being that you cause to conscious beings. This first advisement recognizes that it's not practical to never cause harm to anyone, so it's only suggesting that we do whatever is practically possible. In other words, you can follow that advisement perfectly, 100%, and still unintentionally harm tiny organisms when you walk on the grass or you wash your face. You can still use antibiotics if you get a bacterial infection. You can still use reasonable force to defend yourself against a violent attack. You can still choose the lesser of two evils to protect others or yourself from immediate physical harm. Using reasonable force in self-defense, I think that's okay. This advisement also recognizes the significance and importance of conscious beings, as I've already said. The first advisement specifies what we mean by harm, and harm entails a reduction of well-being, and that could be physical well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, or spiritual well-being. All of those feed into how well we are. Note that the first advisement doesn't say other conscious beings, it says merely conscious beings, or more universally, conscious beings, because that includes you. A lot of people have difficulty trying to figure out, well, isn't morality about being good to others? What about me? No, it's about all conscious beings, and we are conscious beings. So we do have the right, it is right to be good to ourselves as well. The second advisement, which is basically, it's help those who are in need. I'll talk a little bit about that one. In my subjective opinion, if you want to be a moral person, if you want to only act in ways that are morally right, you don't have to help those who are in need. You really only have to try not to harm anyone. I mean, really try as good as you can, do whatever's practically possible not to harm anyone. That's the important one. If we could all get that, the world would be like 95.72% better than it is right now if we're all trying not to harm anyone. Sure, we'd still have accidents, we'd have misunderstandings, but what I've experienced throughout my life is that there is as much harm caused by people who are trying to stop harm than there is by people who are just bad people going out and harming everybody. Because even the good people who are out there. Now, I'm not going to use that word because a good person is somebody who doesn't cause harm. The people who are well intentioned, they see lots of bad people doing lots of bad things, and how do they react? They go and do lots of bad things to the people who are doing lots of bad things. It's like we'll be peaceful. We're going to get peace by attacking the people who are preventing us from getting peace. Do you not see the problem with that? If we can all just stop, if we can all just stop and say, maybe the most peaceful thing to do would be not to go and attack those people whom we don't like. I'm not going to go and attack the people who do things or think things or believe things that I don't like. Just going to let them be. And then when we stop attacking them, they might think, oh, they stopped attacking us. Maybe they're not so bad after all. Maybe we don't need to keep attacking them. There are cycles of conflict which go round and round and on and on. We just need to stop. So you don't have to help those who are in need. The most important thing is to don't harm anybody. But then, if you've got that part sorted, you're no longer harming people to the extent that's practically possible. Then maybe go out and start helping people who are in need. Now, obviously, we can't help everyone who's in need in the universe, or even just in our neighborhoods. We don't have the time, the energy, the money, or the knowledge to go and help everybody. So that's why the advisement says do whatever is practically possible. Yeah, so there are some people out there that will say, well, I can't save the world, so why bother? But if you can save the person who's standing next to you, well, that person's going to appreciate that. And if you save one person, you've made the universe a better place. If you're nice to 10 people, you've made it enormously better than it was before, even if you can't save everyone. The third advisement, which in its approximate form is be kind to others, basically, acts to increase, protect, or promote the well-being of one or more conscious beings. Again, the first part of the advisement is to steer people away from harming anyone while they're attempting to be kind to someone. For example, it wouldn't be moral to be kind to a murderer by helping the murderer to murder, because the cost of that kindness would be a severe reduction of well-being of the person who was murdered. That's kind of obvious, but you've got to put it into a rule. You've got to put it into something that we can follow, because people are sheep. They need something to follow. This is something that you can follow without being led astray. The second advisement is about increasing the well-being of those who are in need. The third advisement is about increasing the well-being of anyone. Now, in my opinion, the world would benefit more from focusing on helping those who are in need than those who aren't. So my opinion is that the second advisement is more important than the third. However, I do think that it's also morally right to try to elevate the well-being of people or animals who aren't particularly in need. It's morally right to make people who are already happy, happier. It's morally right for us to focus some of our kindness on our friends and family, even though there might be others in the universe who are more in need than them. It's also right sometimes to focus on our own well-being, even when we are not as in need as others. And so I'm building all this into the wording of the moral advisements in a way that permits us to take care of ourselves when we need to take care of our friends and our family when we need to, without feeling guilty that, well, we're not helping all of those other people. If you're following any of the three advisements, then you're acting in a way that's morally right. So I'm going to read out those three moral approximations again, and the three moral advisements, and have a think about it. Are these advisements that that you think you would like to follow? Try not to harm anyone. While trying not to harm anyone, help those who are in need. While trying not to harm anyone, be kind to others. And the full versions, do whatever is practically possible to minimize any reductions of well-being that you cause to conscious beings. While doing whatever is practically possible to minimize any reductions of well-being that you cause to conscious beings, act to increase, protect, or promote the well-being of one or more conscious beings who have deficits of well-being. While doing whatever is practically possible to minimize any reductions of well-being that you cause to conscious beings, act to increase, protect, or promote the well-being of one or more conscious beings. Next week, I'm going to talk about how do we live our lives according to these things? Because it's one thing to put down the rules; it's another thing to interpret them. But we're running out of time, so what I am going to say here and now is tomorrow evening I am taking a group astrally to the Galactic Council spacecraft. We have a seat on the council. We can sit at their table, and we go there once a week. Tomorrow evening, we're going to go there and communicate with the Galactic Council, and we're going to ask them if they can help facilitate a spiritual connection between us and the spirit realm. And we're going to ask the spirits in the spirit realm, human spirits of people who have died, if they would like to come and assist us in connecting with aliens. Basically, three different sort of categories of beings all connecting together. If you would like to get involved with that, or if you would like to get involved with my Saturday event, which is going to be an Arcturian contact meditation, then please join my Patreon group at www.patreon.com stroke alien contact. I will apologize again for all of the noise here. Hopefully next week I will be in a less noisy environment. I thank you very much for watching. I wish you all peace, love, and well-being. Goodbye for now.